Okay, and we are live. What's up,
Hey,
everyone? Hey, Luke.
what is cooking?
How are things in your neck of the woods?
Pretty great, man. Enjoying the summer. Just got back from the river.
Did you now? The river? You went river rafting?
Um, the Fria River. So not rafting, but just hanging out. Basically, just like a campsite type cabin around the river. Good
Well,
stuff.
got to tell you, there is a lot of things going on in pretty much the world and the economy and politics. There is weather. You just went through like a hurricane. Um,
Right.
uh, there's all kinds of stuff. Don't even know where to start. So I guess we can start with we're now on August 2nd, and the required changes to the NAR settlement comes August 17th.
Right.
So a lot of changes going on in the industry. What are you hearing from your people you're working with?
Um, it's interesting. It's like a mixed bag. Some people are totally freaking out. Sky's falling, and some people are just powering through and just, you know, business as usual, kind of, but, saying like, okay, here we go. I think some more seasoned people are just kind of used to change or they've been through some changes, whether it's market or whatever, but, um, yeah, so
Have you ever heard of my MAT? Have I ever shared with you the MAT principle? You ever remember that? The MATT principle?
I'm not sure.
So the MAT principle is it's an acronym, and it's uh, it's the four principles to be successful at real estate and mortgages, pretty much in anything. So
Okay.
the M stands for mindset, mental,
Hmm.
because you succeed or fail in your mind first before you ever happens in physical world. Number two is adaptable. And that's where I'm kind of going with this is that the sky is
Okay.
falling and such. If there's anything that we have in the real estate industry or anything that's just going on in life, the only constant is change. And the
Right.
people who are typically going to be okay are the ones who recognize that change and they readjust their sail to to go in that direction. One of
Yeah.
the things that we've often said is that history's proven that houses sell in every type of market, and that's true. You and I did very, very well during the Great Recession, while a lot of our friends did not. But this is kind of that being adaptable. Are you adaptable? The third one is technical. You have to have like a technical set of skill sets. You have to have the technical understanding of a real estate transaction. You have to know forms. You have to technically know how to do the buyer process. You have to know
Hmm.
what to say, how to say it, skill development, getting good, practice. And then the last one is tactics, MATT, tactics. And that is just using all those things, your mindset, being adaptable, the
Hmm.
technical skills that you've created, and taking those tools and applying those to the daily activities to drive things. So when you said that, when the sky's falling, I've been talking a lot about the MAP principle lately. I
Yeah.
usually talk about it, but it seems to be very, very relevant right now.
Right. The where do you see people getting the most hung up on? Is it mostly just like process, like technical, or
Depends on what market they're in. Depends on what state they're in. So Utah, where I got my first license and where I started my career, they've always had legal requirements for signed buyer representation. The
right?
only change that they had to make was that most people were getting the buyer representation agreement signed at the same time they're getting a contract signed. I never did that. I was always getting buyer agency agreements signed before providing services. So when I
Right.
came to California, I just brought my business practices with me. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, I didn't learn, I always thought that it was legally required in California up until about 6 months ago when all of this kind of came to fruition. And I realized it's just an agency state. It's a disclosure state, and we had a buyer representation agreement, but it wasn't law or
Hmm.
required that you get it signed. But there are other states that's never had it. Florida's never had it. What was it? Oklahoma. Oklahoma's, dude, they didn't even have agency. I was talking to a guy. I'm like, well, then what'd you represent? He's like, the agent represented the transaction. I'm like, represented the transaction? How do you represent a transaction? I'm like, so you like talking like a loan? So it's more of a customer than a client? He goes, yeah. And so now there's legislation getting passed. So every different state's different. There is a common denominator. Those I've found that have typically had a more buyer-based business, I find that they sell on price. They sell on the fact that why would you want to work with the listing agent when working with an agent is either free or the seller pays my commission. So that whole
Yeah.
talk track has just gone extinct. And
Right.
now they actually have to start adjusting on value. You know, they have to share what they're going to get for the compensation that they're going to get paid. And so
Yeah.
I'm noticing that there's a combination of that. But you know what? This too will pass. This too will pass.
Right.
I mean, I personally think that it's actually good for the industry. I can't imagine. Now, I come from a spot where I was always getting signed representation agreements, regardless if it was a listing or a buyer. So I'm
Right.
looking at things from a unique perspective. And I think that this is good for our industry. I can't think of any other industry that says, no, 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 I'm just going to do all this work for free. You don't have to worry about it. Someone else is going to pay the bill. I don't know any other industry that did that. So I think the strong will
Yeah.
survive.
Totally. I think. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of just pressure and stuff, mortgage, real estate, market related, where it's just shit. I think it's going to be kind of an. I was thinking about this the other day. A lot of it'll look very different over the course of the next like 12 to 24 months. And I think there's going to be a good separation of like people who just continue to do really well, and then a lot more thinning of the herd. I was just taken back by how many lenders are out of the market or did not reactivate their license over the course of the past 2 years. And yeah, so it's um,
So once the refi market goes, there goes the agents. I mean,
yeah,
or excuse me, loan officers.
yeah, it's so it should be, you know, interesting times, like you said. There's a lot of stuff going on. When what was I thinking? Oh, I saw something, and did you see the Zillow? They have what was it? It was like
A
it was an
24 state,
yeah, it was like an offer to offer to show. I
a
don't,
non-representation showing agreement.
yeah, a showing agreement. That's what I
Yeah.
was. That's the word I was looking for. Um, it should be interesting to see what like things like that they come up, um, or that come out of this whole process where it's like this. I'm not offering. I'm not. It's not an authorization to represent you, but just to show a property or something.
Here, let's pull that up. I got that. Yeah. So it's this thing right here, right? The buyer agreement. What you need to know if you're thinking about buying a chance. What is a touring agreement? And it goes through. So everyone's really kind of going through this, and the truth of the matter is, people are just trying to figure things out. That's
Yeah,
all it is. People are trying to figure it
totally.
out. One thing that the NAR is not a governing authority. They don't make
Right.
laws. They don't send people to jail. Now, in my career, the policing aspect of the association realtors, it's really a self-policing environment where if there's a complaint from member to member, what would happen is a member would submit a complaint to their local board of realtors. it would then go to a grievance committee. And that grievance committee is just a review committee. The review
Hmm.
committee is to determine whether or not there's enough merit on that face value to send that on to the professional standards committee. And the professional standards committee is somewhat of like a tribunal, a panel of.
Right.
I've served on both of them before. And so what happens is you invite one party in, you invite the other party in, and you get to hear both sides of the story. And then based on what the collective was, they render a verdict and they send it off. And, what do we do? Do we fine them? Do we slap their hand? Do we put a monetary? Do we take away their membership? That's really kind of the policing arm of it. So as I think through a lot of this stuff, with I believe that the MLS systems have now lost their utility.
Right.
The primary utility of a MLS system was that there was a co-brokerage agreement between members, and there was a cooperative compensation agreement as such as well. Well, that's gone. That's gone. Now we just have a real estate portal of houses. Well, there's a lot of real estate portals with houses. So I'm very interested in to see. There was another person that I heard online. One of the premonitions that he has is that NAR will file bankruptcy inside of a year. I'm like, oh, that's bold. That's that's his opinion. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I can definitely see with them losing their a lot of people just got their license. People that I know, they don't get a whole lot of value from being a member, with exceptions to having access to a lockbox and a access to the MLS, and then that cooperating compensation. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Not entirely sure how all that's going to work out.
Yeah. The whole fragmented system always seems so archaic to me. Like, yeah.
Well, it's no longer. Well, it's still archaic.
Yeah.
It's We'll see what happens. What's that? So we were talking offline, like we've said that we should never do at the end of it, and we were talking numbers last week.
Oh, yeah.
And you're doing a lot of things with AI as far as uh, using technology to do these traditional prospecting activities. But
Hmm.
what you and I were talking about, and I'm hoping that we can go through the numbers again because I think it's relevant. I was just, excuse me, I was just in Tucson, and I was delivering a training, and one of the trainings that I start out with is I'm like, what you and I have often said is that the problem with cold prospecting is not that it doesn't work. The problem is that it does work. And
Yeah.
then to what degree, to what expense is that really costing you? And then I go through and I look at the number of people on the do not call list versus the population of the United States. And if you assume that every man, woman, and child in the population of the United States has a phone, then based on the number of numbers on the do not call list, then 3 out of 4 Americans, man, woman, and child, are on it. And then as you eliminate different age groups, that goes smaller. So if you eliminate the front end of up to 12 years old and the back end after 75, really what you come up with is about 95% of people are on the do not call list. Just simple math. It's not scientific. It's just like, let's just compare these two numbers and to what we got. But I think it's also, it paints a picture. So what I wanted to talk to you about was, I believe, and I think the data suggests that your personal data, that most people aren't answering their phones on unidentified or unknown numbers. So remind me how many dials your system is making a day, if you're okay with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it has the capacity to do virtually unlimited. We personally, for myself, I think we're doing about 10,000 a day. And the numbers that we are going over, it was about anywhere in between about like a 5 to 6% like live call rate, I think, from the numbers that we were looking at. But pound for pound, what that really was translating into, because we're doing you know outreach to a scheduled call using AI, full AI, start to finish. Um,
So
and
let's talk about that. So it's you feed a number into it, and whatever other demographic information you
mhm,
have. It makes the initial call. It schedules the appointment ish,
yep.
right? Is that a same call? Does that happen on the same call, or is that a different
Same,
call?
yeah, no, same call, start to finish. So, hello to scheduled book call, like looking on your calendar, see what's available, scheduling it at the appropriate times. Um, can also live transfer as well, but we typically lean towards just scheduled calls, just for um, time management purposes. But yeah, end to end, calling through virtually, however much data that you want to provide and budget that you want to run. I think we're like can dial through it, and this is probably on the low end because it's just cranking through some numbers. You know, you could probably call 10,000 records for $20, and schedule from that. Typically, I think we're running anywhere from like 3 to like high end, like $10 per scheduled appointment. Which you compare that to like inbound
Well, look, you're paying a human at
Facebook,
$20 an hour
right?
ish, probably. Let's say starting. I mean, that's what they pay fast food people. So I would imagine that when you're into that sales skill, you'll have that plus a bit plus some sort of base or excuse me, a bonus structure. But
Yeah,
let's say 6 hours a day. That is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, $120 a day times five. So there's like what 600, 700 bucks. 120 times five is 5, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So $700, right? I don't know math. Um,
yeah. I mean, even if you're paying, $7 an hour for
the Philippines, yeah,
call center,
outsourcing.
Philippines or Mexico, we do all of our sales and business development people in the Americas, so Central America, Mexico, same hemisphere.
Okay, and so when you say a 5 to 6% live call rate, what's a live call rate? Is that just someone picking up the phone?
No, that's like essentially what I'd say, like a qualified call over 60 seconds. Just like a pickup hang up is
Okay, yeah,
not really registering.
yeah, because it'll ring. It'll take. I mean, it used to take 45 seconds just to ring three times.
Right.
So typically, that's what I always did. As you always wanted to look at a 60-second. Any call that lasted longer than 60 or 90 seconds was a typical. So you're looking at on the low end 5% for $20.
Yeah, I mean it's pound for pound by far the best ROI advertising, call booking, marketing that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. And you're doing this B2C. So I just want to, being that we put this on YouTube and people are watching this, that you're compliant, you do this to business.
Business to business and B2C, for I mean on the B2C side there's you have your people opting in and stuff, or
Okay.
calling your
Yeah.
database.
It's what we would
um
call white hat policies.
yeah.
You're on the above board. But I would listen to it. I would probably, if something called me, number one, I wouldn't answer the call anyways, but rarely do I answer any type of unidentified number or unknown number unless I'm expecting a number. Have you ever happened to that?
Right.
You're waiting for a call and someone calls you from like that area code and you're like, oh my gosh, you missed it. But I don't. I think I would take the call once it identified that it's an AI something rather, just to check it out.
Yeah.
Now, this I think this too will pass though. Either A, it's going to get better and better and better and just pass as a human. B, more and more people are going to catch on to it, and it's just going
Mhm.
to cause fewer and fewer calls to be answered. Or C, probably a combination of the two.
I think that I think there will be more adoption, welcomed adoption by a lot of people. And so this is just kind of like a hypothesis that I have. It's like, when you walk into a store and like somebody's there and they're like, how can I help you? Immediately, you're like, I'm just looking around, right? I mean, and then I kind of take a look at it where it's like, imagine going to that same store and being able to browse through, just visiting their online store and being able to look at everything, and you have some sort of like pop up that's like, hey, can I help you? Are you looking for anything? And then you're like, you know, I think there will be more of a willingness for people to engage with it from a sales standpoint, because they're not going to feel like the sales pressure of like talking with a human. Just a an opinion where I think that like I think there will be a lot more reception to it from folks, just for that reason. Like they're just going to feel more comfortable asking questions, digging in, not feel like they're being judged or like, because I mean, you think about it, like when somebody calls like a lender, one of the number one questions that they ask is like, what's your interest rate? They just don't have any they don't know what else to ask, right? So
Yeah.
I think they can ask, just have the comfortability to ask just general questions and not feel uncomfortable about it. So
Well, and you've gone through and you've given the AI the answers to these most frequently asked questions. So is it regurgitating the script, or is it just taking the information and changing the essence is the same, but it's just a
yeah,
word for word?
I mean, it has a capacity to
Be more
like
conversational.
yeah, it's definitely more conversational. Some of the stuff, it's like I'll have, if there's certain questions, kind of guidelines on how we'd prefer to have them answered. But for the most part, you say, hey, it's more of like a goal oriented type thing. Like, hey, you're connecting with this person. The goal is to schedule an appointment with them. And so essentially it's like, hey, and it understands that it's coming from like a sales aspect
Yeah.
versus like just providing information or customer support type of a thing. So it's like your role is sales, your goal is to schedule an appointment. um, so it can focus on overcoming objections, being persistent about moving a call forward. um, but yeah, one of the things that early on is like trying to keep it in its guardrails or keeping it in its defined role, or moving forward with its goals, which it's done insanely well. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean that's a big reason why I'm like mentioning earlier that I think this industry is going to look a lot different over the course of the next 12 to 24 months, because I'll be honest, like this AI capacity is way better than 90% of every
The real
single
salespeople.
mortgage and real estate person out there. I'm not joking, man. It's
Well, we've trained
embarrassing.
a lot of people. So
Yeah. And you know, when you think about these big companies that have access to this type of stuff, and they have their bottom line. They have an obligation to their shareholders to make money. And guess what? If they could not pay a point, 2 points, 3 points to a lender and have an AI essentially do the entire, loan application start to finish,
Yeah.
answering the questions, like they're gonna freaking do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, um, do you think that is this technology? I mean, it's readily accessible to pretty much anyone. I mean, there's a learning
Mhm.
curve to it. You put your time and effort and resources into the learning curve to it, but I think
Yeah.
anybody could probably use this, right? What do you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's I mean you're like your average person who's maybe not super technical might have, pretty significant hurdle, getting up and going with something like that. Um, but your, billion-dollar companies with virtually unlimited budgets and manpower,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. They'll develop. So here's the thing. ChatGPT came out about a year and a half ago. Maybe not even that. Maybe just over a year. That was version 1. We're now on version 4, and there's
Right.
a lot of other competitions coming in here that are just doing some wild things as far as video, as far as content creation, and it's only been a year.
Right.
So I would imagine that as these models continue to advance, they're going to become more conversational. And if you're saying that they're 95% better than a live person now, God, give it a year.
Yeah.
It 4x itself in 1 year. Let's see what happens in this next year. It
Right.
might be a bust that everyone needs to start really focusing and getting on.
Yeah, it's going to continue to shake. I mean, at first, like when it first came out, I was like, "Hey, this is definitely going to disrupt some stuff." Increase the product. Give people the capacity to increase their production, like significantly leveraging, a lot of different stuff. But I mean, it seems like the industry is just under attack. Their margins are under attack, and this is just like another thing where you know, it gives more capacity to some of the players to be able to chip away at it.
Sure, sure, I get it. All right, well, look, we are just coming up on time. Went by fast today, but it's always good talking to you. Hold on the line. For those of you watching the video, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next week.